I wasn't prepared for what I found that night. You never are you? You think you're just going to be another pair of hands on the job, another cog in the machine. But sometimes, the machine turns on you. That night, it was just supposed to be a routine investigation. The museum had recently discovered a sarcophagus under the floor of an old church crypt. I'd worked on restoring artifacts for years, paintings, sculptures, furniture, anything, but this was different. This was something ancient, something that hadn't seen the light of day in centuries. And as much as I liked to tell myself I wasn't superstitious, there was something about it that just didn't sit right with me. Something in the air that felt heavy, like the world was holding its breath. I was alone in the crypt. The others had already gone home for the night, and it was just me in the sarcophagus, bathed in the pale light of my flashlight. I'm not sure why I was the one they called in for the job. It wasn't my usual gig, but they trusted me with the task of cracking open the lid, so I did it. As I pried the heavy stone lid off, my heart started to beat faster, like I was trespassing in a forbidden place, and the air around me grew colder, making my breath visible in the dim light. At first, I thought it was just the chill of the crypt, but no. There was something else in that sarcophagus, a presence, a whisper in the dark. My eyes flicked down into the stone tomb, expecting the usual contents, a skeleton, a mummy wrapped in linen. But no, what I saw made my stomach drop. A photograph. Not a decayed relic from an ancient past, but a photograph, a modern one, glossy and vibrant in contrast to the surroundings. It was a picture of Alice, my wife. The one person I thought I knew better than anyone else in this world. The woman I had been married to for 7 years. She looked young in the photo, probably around her early 20s. The smile on her face was the same one she wore when we first met, a smile that made everything feel like it was going to be all right. I froze. My heart raced, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. Why was her photo here? What the hell was it doing in a sarcophagus that had been buried for centuries? I turned the photo over, expecting to see a standard message on the back, maybe a note from the photographer, a date, something that would make sense of this madness. But instead, I saw an inscription in flowing, elegant script. She is not who she seems. The words hit me like a ton of bricks. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I tucked the photograph into my jacket, my hand shaking as I did so, and I quickly shoved the lid back onto the sarcophagus. The strange feeling still clung to me, like the air had changed, like something unseen had crossed into my world. I didn't know what to make of it, and I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? Who would believe that my wife's photo was in a centuries-old tomb with an inscription like that? I couldn't even explain it to myself. I left the crypt in silence, the image of Alice's photo still burned into my mind. I felt like I was standing on the edge of something, like I had uncovered a secret that I wasn't ready to face. That night, I barely slept. When I did close my eyes, I saw the photo again, the smile, the inscription, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The premonition grew stronger as the night wore on, and when the morning light finally crept into the sky, I knew something had changed. Something had begun that I couldn't stop. I walked into the house, and there she was, sitting on the couch as if nothing had happened, her face lit up by the soft glow of the lamp beside her. She was reading a book, her eyes lost in the pages, the calmest I had ever seen her. Alice, at 34, looked every bit the woman I married, but something about her felt off. I could feel it in my bones, like a shadow hanging just out of reach, just behind her smile. I asked her the question that had been gnawing at me ever since the moment I saw that photograph. Have you ever been to Virginia before? Before me? She looked up from her book, her gaze cold and sharp. Never. Why do you ask? I swallowed hard. The truth had hit me like a freight train, but I couldn't make sense of it. The words echoed in my mind, she is not who she seems. I knew, without a doubt, that she was lying. But why? Why would she lie about something like this? The house felt colder suddenly. Alice didn't seem to notice, but I could feel the tension building between us, thick and suffocating. The question I'd asked had broken something inside me, and I wasn't sure how I was supposed to move forward. How could I live with someone who wasn't who I thought she was? How could I go back to the life we built, knowing there was someone lurking in the shadows of our past? The next morning, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. That photo, the inscription, Alice's cold response, it all weighed on me like a stone lodged in my chest. I tried to act normal, but my mind kept spinning, caught between the memory of the crypt and the unnerving question I had asked her. Had she ever been to Virginia before me? It seemed like a simple enough question, but her reaction told me everything I needed to know. I didn't want to admit it, but deep down, I was already starting to piece things together. Something was wrong with her, something deep and hidden, something she had been hiding for a long time. I spent most of the day going over old documents, reports from the museum, anything that might offer some explanation. But the more I dug, the more questions popped up, and none of them had clear answers. I knew that I needed to look deeper into the history of the crypt, but I couldn't quite bring myself to return there, not yet. Instead, I found myself drawn to a box of old VHS tapes that had been left behind by the previous rector of the church. I'd gone through them once before, but I hadn't given them much thought. Now, with the unsettling events of the night before still fresh in my mind, I felt a pull to look again. I wasn't sure what I expected to find, but I couldn't ignore the feeling that there was something in those tapes, something I had missed the first time. I sat down in front of the old TV in the corner of the basement, the soft hum of the machine filling the silence as I slipped the tape into the player. The screen flickered for a moment before the footage came to life. The first few tapes were uneventful, just mundane footage of church services, the rector speaking to the camera, a few shots of the church interior. But then, there was one tape that caught my eye. The label was smudged, but I could make out the year, 1993. Curiosity piqued, I pressed play. The image on the screen was grainy, old, and barely visible at first, but as the camera focused, I could make out a figure standing in the same crypt where I had been the night before. The person was facing the camera, her expression serious, almost solemn. The woman on the screen looked strikingly familiar, but it took me a moment to realize why. She looked exactly like Alice, only younger, much younger. I leaned forward, squinting at the screen, my heart skipping a beat as the realization dawned on me. This woman, standing in the crypt, was Alice, at least, a version of her from a time long before we had ever met. I felt a cold chill run down my spine as the camera zoomed in on her face. The resemblance was uncanny. She looked so much like Alice that it was almost impossible to believe it wasn't her. But then, the caption appeared on the screen, scrawled in bold letters, "She's back." Again, my breath caught in my throat. What did that mean? What was going on? The tape flickered, and then the screen went black, leaving me sitting in stunned silence. I rewound the tape and played it again, my mind racing. The woman in the video had to be Alice. But how? How was this possible? I didn't know what to do with this information. I was drowning in questions and no answers. The strangest part was that the video had been filmed in the very same place where I had found that photograph of Alice. How did that fit together? What was the connection between this woman from the tape and my wife, the woman who claimed she'd never been to Virginia? I couldn't stop the thoughts from swirling in my head, each one more confusing than the last. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that something dark and mysterious was hidden just beneath the surface of our lives. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to uncover the truth, or if I could live with it once I did. The hours slipped by, and I still hadn't made sense of what I had seen. I knew I had to confront Alice, but the thought of what I might learn terrified me. I couldn't shake the feeling that the truth was far more dangerous than I could possibly imagine. But I couldn't turn back now. I had already stepped into this dark, twisted world, and there was no way to escape it. As the sun set and the shadows stretched across the room, I knew that I was getting closer to something closer to the truth, or closer to the abyss. Either way, I couldn't ignore the pull any longer. I found myself standing at the door of the house, staring at the doorknob as if it were a barrier I couldn't cross. Inside, Alice was waiting for me, the woman I thought I knew, the woman I had loved. But now, I wasn't so sure anymore. I felt like a fool for not seeing the signs before, for not noticing the cracks in her facade. But how could I have? She had been so good at playing the role of the perfect wife. She had been so convincing. But now, the pieces were falling into place. The photo, the video, the strange feeling that something wasn't quite right. It all led to one inescapable conclusion. Alice wasn't who she seemed. And whatever she was hiding, whatever dark secret she had kept from me, I was about to find out. I took a deep breath and walked into the house, knowing that I couldn't walk away from this. Not anymore. The next few days felt like a blur, a nightmare unfolding at the edges of my reality. Every moment I spent in the house with Alice felt like I was living a lie, and the more I thought about it, the more everything about her began to seem off. Her smile, her voice, even the way she moved around the house, it was as if I had been living with a stranger all this time, someone who had worn the mask of the woman I loved, but now that mask was slipping, revealing a darkness I couldn't comprehend. My questions had only grown, swirling in my mind like a storm I couldn't escape. What was Alice hiding? And how could she have been in that video, in the crypt, all those years ago? I was becoming obsessed, but I knew I couldn't stop digging. I had to know the truth, no matter how terrifying it might be. I had tried to confront Alice again. I asked her more questions, but each time she gave me the same cold, almost rehearsed responses. I don't know what you're talking about. You're imagining things. I've never been to Virginia before you. She said it all with the same calm detachment, the same practiced smile that made my blood run cold. It was like talking to a stranger wearing Alice's skin. But it wasn't just her words that made me uneasy, it was the way she avoided my gaze, the way she flinched when I touched her, the way her eyes darted around the room as if searching for a way out. Something was wrong, and I was getting closer to the truth whether she wanted me to or not. I spent my days digging into the church's history, trying to find some connection between Alice and the crypt. The more I looked, the more I realized how little I knew about the place where we had gotten married, the church that seemed so ordinary, so unremarkable. But there was a strange pattern I began to notice in the records. Every 20 years, there had been reports of mysterious disappearances, of people vanishing without a trace. It started in the 1800s, and the records were sparse, but each case had one common thread. A woman had been involved. No names, no clear descriptions, just vague references to a mysterious woman who appeared in the lives of the victims before they disappeared. The pattern had continued up to the present day, and each time, the disappearances had occurred in the same place, the church crypt, the very place where I had found that photograph of Alice. I had to speak to someone who might know more. Someone who might have answers. That's when I remembered Father Graves, the local priest who had been at the church longer than anyone else in the area. He had always been a quiet man, a figure who seemed to drift in and out of the shadows, but I knew he had been there for decades. He was one of the few who might know the real history of the church, the secrets it kept hidden beneath the surface. Maybe he could help me make sense of it all. I met Father Graves at the church late one afternoon, after the sun had set and the shadows in the pews seemed to stretch out, filling the room with an eerie quiet. The old priest looked as if he hadn't aged a day in 20 years. His weathered face was lined with years of experience, but his eyes held something darker. When I showed him the photograph I had found in the sarcophagus, he went pale. I had expected surprise, maybe confusion, but not fear. His hand shook slightly as he took the photo from me, his eyes scanning it as if he were searching for something only he could see. "This woman," Father Graves whispered, his voice barely audible. "She's been coming here every 20 years. He paused as if gathering his thoughts. "Always the same. Always looks the same. And always, one of her husbands disappears. This is not her first marriage." His voice cracked on the last sentence, and I could see the fear in his eyes. I felt my heart drop into my stomach. What did he mean? Who was she? And why hadn't Alice ever mentioned anything about this? The questions I had been carrying for days now seemed to weigh 1,000 pounds, but Father Graves wasn't finished. He took a deep breath, as if steeling himself for something difficult to say. "I've seen this before," he continued. "Many years ago, a similar woman came through here. She was different then, but she was still the same. She comes, she stays for a time, she loves, and then, like clockwork, someone dies. And she moves on. But she doesn't age. She doesn't change. It's always the same." He stared at me, his eyes wide with fear, like I had just walked into something far more dangerous than I could understand. "I don't know how she does it, but it's always been the same. It's a curse, a deal, something unnatural. She comes, she takes, and then she disappears." I could barely breathe. The words Father Graves spoke seemed impossible, like something out of a twisted fairy tale, but they made too much sense. They fit with what I had seen. The strange video, the crypt, the pattern of disappearances, the photograph of Alice. It all connected. But what did that mean for me? What did that mean for Alice? And most importantly, what did that mean for the life I thought we had built together? I left the church in a daze, my mind racing, my thoughts tangled in a web of horror and disbelief. I had always known Alice was special, but this was something far darker than I could have ever imagined. The woman I loved, the woman I married, was hiding something far more terrifying than I could understand. And I wasn't sure if I even wanted to know the full truth. But it was already too late. The pieces were falling into place, and I couldn't turn back now. Whatever Alice was, whatever she had done, I was in this, whether I liked it or not. The more I tried to ignore it, the louder the truth screamed at me. I had spent weeks burying myself in research, desperate for an answer that would make sense, but everything I uncovered only led to more questions. Alice's lies, Father Graves' warnings, the crypt, the photograph, it was all a trail that I couldn't escape. It felt as though I were walking in the footsteps of someone who had walked the same path long before me, like I was playing a part in a much older story that I had no control over. And yet, despite all of this, I was still trapped in the same life, with Alice, in our house, pretending that everything was normal when I knew deep down that it was anything but. Then one night, I saw something that I couldn't ignore. Alice had been acting strange for days, distant, distracted, like she was hiding something. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was planning something that she wasn't telling me about. So, I decided to follow her. It wasn't something I was proud of, but I had to know what she was doing. Maybe I could catch her in the act. Maybe I could find something that would finally explain everything. It started as a quiet evening, just another night at home, when Alice put on her coat, grabbed her purse, and told me she was going out. Her usual excuse, a late-night errand, nothing unusual. But I could feel it in my gut that this was different. She wasn't just going to the store. No, she was hiding something. I waited until she was out the door, and then I followed her, keeping my distance. She drove through the streets, taking turns that felt increasingly unfamiliar, heading into the heart of town, far from the places we usually went. My heart beat faster as I trailed her, trying to keep my presence unknown. I was growing more and more anxious, wondering where she was going and why she was being so secretive. She didn't stop at a grocery store or a cafe, places I would have expected. Instead, she drove down a narrow road leading to an old, run-down motel on the outskirts of town. My stomach sank. I watched as she parked in front of the building, her headlights cutting through the darkness. She got out of the car and walked into the motel, disappearing behind the faded neon sign. I waited for a while, trying to steady my racing thoughts, but my curiosity got the better of me. I had to know what she was doing. I followed her inside, trying to remain unnoticed, as if I were just another guest in a motel that had seen better days. The lobby was empty, the air thick with the smell of stale cigarettes and old carpeting. I couldn't help but feel like I had just entered a place that didn't belong in the world I knew, a place where the lines between reality and something darker were beginning to blur. I asked the clerk for the room number she had checked into, my voice tight, and he gave it to me without question, room 12, at the end of the hall. I crept down the hallway, each step echoing in the quiet, my heart pounding in my chest. When I reached the door, I hesitated. The temptation to open it and confront Alice was overwhelming, but I held back. I wasn't sure I was ready for whatever I would find on the other side. Through the crack in the door, I could see her inside, standing by the window, her back to me. But there was something strange about the way she was dressed. Alice was wearing a long raincoat, the kind you'd see in black and white photos from the 1930s. It didn't make any sense. Why was she wearing that? And then I saw him. The man sitting at the small table in the corner, an elderly figure hunched over with age, his hair thin and white. He wasn't just any man. There was a familiarity to him, a sense of recognition that I couldn't place. But Alice seemed to know him. She spoke to him with a warmth that I had never heard in her voice before, her tone gentle, affectionate, as if she were speaking to a lover she hadn't seen in decades. The way she called him "my dear Jackson" sent a cold shiver down my spine. Jackson? I didn't know anyone by that name, but I didn't need to know. The way Alice spoke to him, the way she looked at him, it was clear that this wasn't some random acquaintance. This wasn't some old friend. This was someone she had known in another life, someone she had loved before. My stomach twisted in knots as I watched them, helpless, trapped in a moment that felt like it was from a time long past. I stood there for what felt like hours, barely breathing, watching them through the crack in the door. Alice and Jackson seemed so engrossed in each other, so lost in whatever history they shared, that they didn't even notice me standing there. I couldn't help but feel like an intruder, like I was witnessing something I wasn't supposed to see. But I couldn't look away. The man, Jackson, had no idea of the role he was playing in her game. He didn't know that he was just another pawn in whatever twisted scheme Alice had been running for decades. He didn't realize that he was part of a cycle that had repeated itself over and over again. And Alice, the woman I had married, was at the center of it all. She wasn't the woman I thought she was. She wasn't just the wife I had built a life with. She was someone else, someone who had lived a life before me, a life I didn't know, a life that I couldn't even begin to understand. I couldn't take it anymore. The truth was too much. I had to confront her, to force the answers out of her, to make her explain what I had just seen. I opened the door and stepped inside, my voice trembling as I called her name. She turned, and for a moment, there was no recognition in her eyes, just a coldness I had never seen before. She didn't seem surprised, didn't even flinch. It was as if she had been waiting for this moment all along. "What is this?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Who is Jackson? What's going on, Alice?" She looked at me for a long moment, her face unreadable, and then she finally spoke. "I can't die, Jeremy," she said softly, her voice tinged with sadness. "And every time I fall in love, it ends with someone dying, because that's part of the deal I never made. I didn't cheat on you. I got involved. But you're the only one who managed to find me before I disappeared." I didn't understand her words at first, but then it hit me, the gravity of what she was saying, the weight of the truth I wasn't ready to accept. She wasn't who I thought she was. She never had been. And as the realization sank in, I saw her face change, her expression hardening as she turned away from me. She stepped into the shadows, and in the blink of an eye, she was gone. The room felt colder. I looked around, desperate, but there was nothing left of her. Only the faint remnants of her presence, like a dream fading in the morning light. And by the fireplace, I found it, the pieces of her wedding ring, scattered in the ashes, the last remnants of the life I thought I had. I sank to my knees, my mind racing, my heart broken, as I realized that everything I thought I knew had been a lie. Alice was gone, and I was left to pick up the pieces. The days that followed Alice's disappearance were a blur, a haunting void that I couldn't seem to escape. The house felt empty without her, as though the walls themselves had become hollow, echoing with the ghosts of everything that had been and everything that would never be. I wandered through each room, unable to shake the image of her, her cold smile, the fragments of her wedding ring still scattered on the ashes of the fireplace like some cruel reminder of the life we had shared, a life built on lies, on a truth I could never have comprehended. My thoughts were a constant whirlwind, the weight of what I had learned crushing me with each passing hour. I kept thinking about what she had said before she vanished, her words echoing in my mind. "I can't die, Jeremy. And every time I fall in love, it ends with someone dying, because that's part of the deal I never made. I didn't cheat on you. I got involved. But you're the only one who managed to find me before I disappeared." There was so much in that statement that I couldn't fully understand, but I knew one thing for certain: Alice wasn't human. She wasn't the woman I had married, the woman I thought I knew. She was something else entirely, something older, something beyond the boundaries of the natural world. I spent my nights combing through the church's records once more, digging through every scrap of information I could find, hoping that some part of the puzzle would click, that some clue would lead me to the truth about her. But it only led to more darkness. The crypt, the disappearances, the strange pattern of a woman appearing every 20 years, taking a new lover, and then vanishing, leaving behind nothing but death. It all pointed to the same terrifying reality: Alice wasn't a person. She was a curse, a force that moved through time, trapped in a cycle that repeated itself over and over again, never changing, always leaving devastation in its wake. Each time, she found someone new to love, someone new to draw into her web, and each time, that person disappeared without a trace. There had been others before me, others who had fallen victim to her, others who had loved her and vanished, like Jackson. There would be others after me, and I, too, would eventually be erased from her life, just as all the others had been. I tried to make sense of it, tried to grasp at any shred of hope that there was something I could do to break the cycle, but the truth was inevitable. There was no escaping her, no running from what she was. The life I thought I had with her was a lie, a beautiful, perfect lie that had been carefully constructed to keep me in the dark, to keep me trapped in her world, until the time came for me to disappear, just like all the others. The only difference was that I had found her. I had uncovered her secret. I had stumbled across the truth before it was too late. And now, I would never be the same. I thought about the first time I met Alice, about the way she had looked at me, the way she had smiled. It all felt like a dream now, a distant memory that I could barely hold on to. She had been so perfect, so real, and I had been so blind. How had I not seen the signs? How had I not realized that there was something other about her, something wrong? But the truth was, I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to face the possibility that the woman I loved could be something far darker than I could ever have imagined. And yet, the truth was undeniable. She had never been mine to keep. She had never been mine to love. She had been a fleeting moment in my life, a beautiful illusion that would vanish just as quickly as it had come. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself growing numb to everything around me. The house, the streets, even the people, nothing seemed to matter anymore. I had already lost everything. The life I had built was gone. Alice was gone, and all that remained were the remnants of a broken reality. I knew that I couldn't stay here, in the place where it all began. The house was a tomb now, a place that would forever remind me of the woman I had lost, the woman who had never truly been mine. I packed a few belongings, took a last look at the empty house, and walked out the door, knowing that there was nothing left for me here. I drove aimlessly for days, not sure where I was going, not sure what I was looking for. The world felt like a distant memory, a place I no longer belonged to. But then, I remembered something Father Graves had said, something that had haunted me ever since I first heard it. She's been coming here every 20 years. Always looked the same. And always one of her husbands disappeared. I knew what that meant. I knew what I had to do. I found myself standing in front of the church once more, the place where it all began, the place where I had first met Alice. The air was thick with the weight of everything that had happened, the weight of the truth I had uncovered. I walked into the crypt, the same place where I had found the sarcophagus, where I had first seen Alice's photo. It was cold inside, the air thick with dust and age. I could almost hear the whispers of the past, the ghosts of all the lives that had been lost here. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, my footsteps echoing in the silence. And there, in the center of the crypt, I saw it, the sarcophagus. It was still there, still untouched, as though time had stood still in this place. I didn't know why I was here. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I felt a pull, something that urged me to open it once more. To see if there was something inside that could explain all of this, something that could finally give me the closure I so desperately needed. I pried the lid off, just as I had done that night. But this time, when I looked inside, there was no photograph, no ancient relic, no memento from the past. There was only darkness. And then, I heard her voice. Soft, familiar, but distant, as if it were coming from far away. "You found me," she whispered. "But now, you're just like the others." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of everything crashing down on me. Alice wasn't gone. She never would be. She was a cycle, an endless loop that couldn't be broken. And I was just another man who had fallen in love with her, only to disappear when the time came. As I turned to leave, the crypt door slowly creaked open, and I felt her presence behind me, just out of reach, always watching, always waiting. And I knew, deep in my soul, that the cycle would never end.